Welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. My name is Jamira Burley. I'm here with my co-host Brea Baker, and today we're going to dive into the horrific case that highlights the state of bodily autonomy, or the lack thereof.
Yes, and that would be the case of Adriana Smith, a Black mother, nurse, and Georgia resident who was pronounced brain dead at 9 weeks pregnant, yet is being forced to carry that child as close to full term as possible. Hospital officials say that their hands are tied. Conservative Georgia elected officials are rejoicing, all while her family pays the emotional price of Adriana being used as a pawn for these political fights over abortion access. It's really horrific, as Jamira said, and we're going to dig into all of it. But before we dive in, we have to start with the latest headlines. And something I can't wrap my mind around is the only Black governor, Wes Moore, vetoing a bill to study reparations. Now, Wes Moore says that he is vetoing this bill because we don't need to keep studying and we don't need reparations, commissions, and task force. We need action. And while it's a really good talking point, and I do understand some people's frustration with constantly studying a problem that we know needs to happen, on a hyper-local level, we need these task forces because it allows us to understand exactly what to implement on a local level. Right now, there are only 3 states in the country, California, New York, and Illinois, that have these reparations task forces. And they are able to look into hyper-local cases of eminent domain, private and public entities that have been invested in and benefited from the legacy of slavery. So then we can understand exactly what we're fixing. It's not enough to say white supremacy is bad, we need reparations. It's like, what exactly do these programs look like? And I think it sends a really bad sign that the only Black governor in the state is saying this is not something we need, regardless of how he's convincing himself of it. I think it's going to be used as narrative of like, see, even Black elected officials don't see the value in this work.
Absolutely. And I think to your point, right, one thing we look at when a governor vetoes a bill, it's normally trying to fix a wrong, right? Like it's trying to protect the general public, or it's trying to ratify something that is either that's causing harm to a particular community that hasn't been taken into consideration. So for the governor to veto this bill, I feel like does not take into consideration the fact that this is what his general public of his community, of his state wants. That they have a desire to study the local implications of how slavery has had on their communities and who benefited and who didn't benefit from it. So for the governor to veto it, I feel like is a slap in the face to his constituents, especially when they've demanded it to happen. And it doesn't have to happen as like, it doesn't have to happen as the only thing that happens, right? We can still start implementing solutions. As the governor mentioned, like there are solutions on the table that could be implemented, but those two things can happen simultaneously. We don't have to stop one to do the other. And to your point, I think it's going to be used both as a talking point by Republicans to highlight the lack of support, even from some Democrats, but also if he has any aspirations to run for president, I don't think now is a time for him to create this division when we all know that Black folks in America has been the only ones who have never received reparations for the harm and crimes that have been committed against us.
Exactly. You hit it right on the head. And I think if your goal is action, you could actually chart a path and say, we're not going to spend 10 years on the research. A lot of the research has been done. We're going to bring those experts to the forefront, make sure that we fully understand, because again, there's a difference between federal reparations and statewide reparations and private company reparations and all of that. So he could say, we're going to fast track this research process because the expertise exists, the research exists. We're just compiling it together. And we're actually going to lead the way in saying, we're not going to dilly-dally on this. We're going to go straight to implementation. Based on the research that we compiled in a year or two, we're going to get started with a guaranteed income component. We're going to get started with baby bonds. We're going to get started with cash payments. We're going to get started with whatever that is that he wants to get the action of. But I just think saying we don't need the research and not immediately following that up with, so here's what I'm going to, put into office and pass, feels like you are trying to placate your base who actually really, really wants this. And I just think it was such a really bad move. So I know that there are those in Maryland who are trying to look into what it looks like to override the veto. And I hope that he takes into consideration the feedback and the criticism he's getting.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be, I think this is going to be a sticking point for his political career. And whoever advised this, I guarantee you, does not feel like they have his best interests at heart. But moving on to the next subject, as many of you all know, DEI is under attack all over the country. And one of the implications of that is seeing the affinity graduations at some of our top universities across the country being canceled, and many of those affinity groups being eliminated altogether. Harvard University has canceled its affinity group graduation. So graduations for a Latino community, graduations for the Black community was at Harvard. And as a response, those affinity groups have said, we still need a space that's just us, that's just for us. And so the Harvard Black Alumni Association, our society, has raised nearly $46,000 to host its own graduation. And I think this is an indicator that sometimes we cannot wait for other people to create the spaces that we need for our community, because there's never been a time in this country's history where Black folks, brown folks have not been under attack. And I think when we see the responses coming from the Trump administration to try to tamper our community's ability to celebrate our success, we have to create those spaces when necessary.
Yeah. I love that too. As you said, it is such a, we don't need your permission anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important. It reminds me of the legacy of organizations like the Black Panther Party, of saying, if our government's not going to feed and house and provide healthcare to us, we're going to do it ourselves. And so I love to see these student groups really, really showing that innovation and that insistence and that resilience. And I hope that like private entities are jumping up and saying, we'll host you. Like, okay, you can't do it on your campus. Our restaurant will, our banquet hall will, whatever the case may be, to make sure that it's accessible and that they're able to do it with joy at the center. Because ultimately, like, it's hard to keep resisting and resisting and resisting, especially during what should be a celebratory moment. So I'm really proud of these students. I'm so proud of them.
Yeah, we need it. We need a little good news sprinkled in there. And also, you know, seeing that people are not awaiting, to your point, not waiting for permission to show up and show out. So
Exactly. Well, next headline, not quite good news, but also not quite, I don't know. I don't really know where to stand on this. Elf Beauty, which had originally marketed itself as like a kind of bargain beauty brand, has been big in its acquisition bag. They just acquired Hailey Bieber's skincare brand Rhode in a deal valued at up to $1 billion. Now, listen, I do not aspire to billionaire wealth. I don't think that we should aspire to that, but it has really pushed this important conversation on social media about, you know, some saying, why don't Black brands get this opportunity? Others saying, hey, when our Black brands do get acquired, we don't like it. We push back. And that's true. We've seen that happen with Mielle and Shea Moisture and Carol's Daughter and others. And I think we have to ask ourselves, like, during what context are we proud of Black founders being acquired? Because it is access to a bigger production opportunity, greater resources for marketing, you know, a more streamlined supply chain. And I'm not a business person myself, but I do think that the conversation is important to say, when are we proud of Black business owners for doing the same versus when do we have different expectations of each other? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I just think the conversation is important to be had.
Yeah, no, I agree. It definitely needs to be had. I don't know who the hell uses Rhode. No shade, no tea, but I don't know anyone in my community.
Honestly, I think I know one person who uses the like phone case.
Okay. Yeah.
That the lip gloss goes into, but I feel like that's a convenience thing. Like,
yeah. No, it definitely is a convenience. I mean, it's that thing is cute. That is cute. But I don't subscribe to their products. No shade again, but I will say I saw this conversation happening for the last 2 days, and two things that I want to bring up. I think we as Black people really need to get away from thinking that acquiring more money is the only marker of success for our community. We cannot duplicate white communities and expect that to be as successful in our communities, especially when we know how capitalism has particularly impacted the Black community, because it doesn't work for us. Like at its central focus, like capitalism alone does not get us free, does not provide us liberation. And so money can't be the only marker of success. Like, how did you impact your community? How did you change your community? How many lives were impacted? How did this transform the people that you care about that look like you? I think those are things that are more core to me and how I define success for myself and other people. But I will say, in regards to how Black companies are criticized for being acquired, is if your target audience is the Black community as your target audience, as your consumers, then you cannot be mad when we give our loyalty to you because you are a Black owner, right? Like, you are a Black business creating products particularly for our hair, for our skin type, targeted to us, and then sell it to a sell it to a company that has never been inclusive of our community, who products oftentimes do not even have shades, have colors in our shade, particular shade. So I think that is where people get a little frustrated, is that it feels like you've now turned us over to institutions that have never loved us, have never created products for us, and oftentimes will change those products to streamline them for other communities, and then we lose out. Right now, those products are no longer safe and healthy for our hair and our skin. So yeah, it's a complicated space. And I think people have to decide, like, if you're creating products for the Black community, then you have to be reconciled with the fact that by selling or by getting acquired by another company actually hurts the people that you say that you're trying to help.
That's so true. And I think that's why this conversation is such an important conversation, because our metrics for success are different. Being acquired for $1 billion does not impress me if you're going to make off like a bandit, but the community that you serve, that fell in love with this product, that felt seen by this product, that was so excited to finally have something that worked for them, is now going to lose out on that benefit. Yeah. And so I think we need to ask ourselves, like, are there acquisition deals and arrangements that allow for continued autonomy, that lock formulas in place, that make sure that Black people are being put in position at the center? If you're going to be acquired by a predominantly white-owned entity, can you make sure that they put Black people in their C-suite and on the board? Can that be, I think we just need to demand more, and just walking away with a check is not enough. And so I think that unfortunately, I think some Black founders are being like, well, we have more pressure on us. And it's like, I mean, yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. And also, again, we're not aspiring to white supremacy. They don't feel the same need to provide something that does good for their community, because they benefit from capitalism in ways that we never will. And so we just have to acknowledge, like, as Audre Lorde said, master tools are not going to free us. We got to do something very, very different. And that might mean that you're getting less money on the end. But, like, what's the difference between a $500 million acquisition and a $1 billion acquisition if the product remains something that your community can actually, like, be excited about and thrive with?
Yeah, like, our standards of success cannot be to replicate white, like, standards of success that were built around white supremacy. We're never going to win. That's why you see people talk about, like, capitalism will get us free. And we have more Black billionaires than ever before in history. And yet Black people are still facing high rates of over policing, high rates of poor education, high rates of obesity, high rates of other health issues. So, like, make it make sense. I mean, get your paper, but also, to your point, like, it comes with responsibility.
Right, but not a thing. So, yeah, don't push poison on your people in the name of getting to your bag.
In other news, and bag news, right, and getting that bag, there is a new decision that was made by the Court of International Trade, a similar decision that was made by the Federal District Court that was done last Thursday, basically provided the Trump administration with a perfect excuse to make the tariffs pause permanently. So, as you might have heard, Trump has implemented tariffs across a number of countries, some being as high as 125% that he imposed on China, some being as low as 25%. But it has had devastating implications on our supply chain, and devastating implications for the cost, like inflation, and how those products are showing up in our stores and its affordability for consumers. But now we have two judgments that have now come from both a federal district judge as well as an international court, trade court, that said that these need to, the tariffs are illegal and they need to stop. And so Trump is now pushing back. But I think it's a reflection that there is momentum even within institutions of power, like within the courts, that are holding Trump feet to the fire and are stopping him from implementing really devastating policies and practices that will harm all of us, even those who actually voted for him, which is ironic.
Child, yeah. And we need that so bad, because I didn't even want to include that recent BBB bill or whatever it's being nicknamed, but it's scary hour right now. And so we need the courts, we need some sort of checks and balances. And if he's dumb enough to allow those, to walk right into the checks and balances, then good. Like, more power to that.
Yeah, I think he thinks he has more influence over the courts than he does, at least at the federal level. And I think even the Supreme Court is saying, no, this doesn't make sense. And also, like, what you're doing doesn't actually help any of us. It doesn't help the average American. It doesn't help the American at the in the middle. It doesn't help. It just helps those at the very, very top, which is the very small 1%. And you are literally destroying our economy. So if you're like me, you probably haven't looked at your 401k, if you have 401k, because, you know, in the last few weeks, the economy. Yeah. So, but it seems to be glimmers of hope, right?
Yeah.
Outside of just expecting communities to organizing, that the courts are doing it as well. So with that being said, we're going to take a quick break, and just to remind you, you are watching On the Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
Bigger and stronger than ever. Season 2 is reloading May 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
What's up?
Being a black man, we gotta stop letting this slide.
With new hosts.
Let me tell you what damn time it is.
And big celebrity surprises.
Kiss my behind. It's Oprah Winfrey.
Subscribe today at Truth Talks Live.
Give black people what they need, and we'll show them for you.
And don't miss out on all the upcoming viral moments.
Simulcasting weeknights at 8 p.m. on Roland Martin Unfiltered and Black Star Network and Truth Talks Live. I'll see you there.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. As usual, before the break, we dug into some of the wildest, most pressing headlines, and now we're shifting gears to a really difficult and painful case. This is the story of Adriana Smith, a Georgia nurse and mother who was found unresponsive after complaining of headaches. When rushed to the hospital, Adriana was pronounced brain dead after not getting the comprehensive care she should have when first seeking medical care.
Yeah, the tragedy doesn't stop there. Not only is Adriana's family mourning their beloved daughter, mother, and friend, but the hospital has said on record that their hands are tied and that the family has no say in the future of Adriana's care, because Adriana was 9 weeks pregnant when pronounced brain dead. Her body is now essentially being under the state's jurisdiction to carry out the pregnancy until birth. And her body is being used as an incubator with no say or input of her family. And I think it's been reported that her family is now also responsible for the financial cost that will be associated with keeping her.
Exactly. And that's what makes matters worse. They've had to open a GoFundMe. In interviews, they've hinted at a good portion of the financial burden having fallen on them. Again, even though they have no control or are not able to make any decisions for Adriana. And they're in the midst of their grieving journey, but having to figure out, like, how do we continue paying for her healthcare and preparing for this child and the 7-year-old child that she's leaving behind?
Yeah, let's hear from Adriana's mother directly.
We wanted to know if she was to abort, would she have a chance at her life? And they said there was no chance or no hope.
In Georgia, the state's heartbeat law bans abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected.
So at that point, we continued with the pregnancy that we didn't have a choice or a say about. And I just want to be clear on something. We want her to have her baby. We want her life to continue throughout her children. But at the same time, to see her lay there like that, for that length of time, the grieving process for us, it can't even start, because every time we go, we grieve and we hurt. And it's just unreal. It's unreal for anyone to go through that.
This is Trump's America. This is a post-Roe world. This is the state of our world in the face of restrictive abortion bans where pro-lifers get to parade around as though their value for life is more important than anyone else's, as they traumatize everyone left and right. And it's so unfair as her loved ones watch on, to have her 7-year-old and her mother having to experience this every single day is so unimaginable. The emotional, physical, and potential financial burden and the challenges that these families will face for months, if not years to come. That is to say that even if her baby is born alive or even born healthy, hearing about the story, I'm just like, this should be the moment that, like, the rallying cry that we all need to stand up and do something. And it just feels like so many people look and feel very paralyzed.
Yeah. And I think that's another aspect of what makes the situation so fucked up, is that people are feeling so helpless right now that I think people don't know how to rally for someone else because they're trying to keep themselves together. It's like, you're outraged about this, you're outraged about deportations, you're outraged about, incoming legislation. A lot of people are just in these situations where the government has more power over their personal medical care decisions than they do. And trying to circumvent this can lead to criminalization and prison. But succumbing to it can kill you. So it's just like double-edged sword. Where do you go from here? And we just need something vastly different than what we have. We need state and federal officials to imagine less cookie cutter policies, so that folks like Adriana's family don't have to be in these situations where the only exceptions to Georgia's Life Act and other local abortion bans are situations where the pregnancy is medically futile, the mother's life is in danger, or the pregnancy resulted from rape or incest. And that's just, that's not enough exceptions. It's like, you're not accounting for the range of needs and wants and people's backs being against walls where they should have a say over what they want their lives to look like and the lives of their children to look like. It's just so unfair. There's so many reasons why people choose to terminate pregnancies. And especially if the government is not going to step in and fully fund not only the birthing person's care, but also that child's long-term care. Keep your name and opinions out of this family's mouth. Like, it just shouldn't even come up. It shouldn't even come up unless they are dropping off stacks of money to April Newkirk, Adriana's mother, and the 7-year-old son and the baby to be born. Zip it. It shouldn't even, you should have no opinion. Talk about it in your group chat.
No, absolutely. And it's just, it's mind-boggling because pro-lifers are not pro-life, right? They're pro-birth. They don't actually care about the child after they come to be, right? And we see that through our adoption agencies, and we see that through, or what I should say, our foster care system. There are hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of young people who never receive a family. And I think it's really indicative of the fact that this country has never truly had a separation of church and state, because people are imposing their religious beliefs and doctrines on everyone else, which is unfair. And also, it's not a reflective of the needs of the community. There's no laws that govern the right of what a man can and cannot do with his own body. But yet every day, people are trying to, particularly white men, are trying to dictate what we do with our body. Like Tupac said, like, if a man can't make one, he has no right to tell a woman when and where to create one. So will the real men get? No, I'm going to stop. But unfortunately, we have so many white men dictating the reproductive rights by and large, and it has devastating impacts. We have seen it. And, I think this segment next will allow us to kind of dig a little bit deeper and hopefully look at some solutions. Look at what other countries are doing who say they truly care about creating safe and holistic places for women to desire and want to bring a child into this world. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. You are watching On the Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change. Before the break, we spent a lot of time on the case of 30-year-old Adriana Smith and the way the state is forcing her body to carry a pregnancy, which really illuminates how women's bodies are being reduced to reproduction and incubation in a post-war world. And I just wanted to say, too, that there's, Adriana's been pronounced brain dead. And there's so much that your brain contributes to a pregnancy, to life in general, to making sure that hormones are emitted when the baby needs it, and that the body is pivoting as needed, and the brain sends signals to other organs to do that. And so this hospital is being forced to replicate the function of the brain in a way that could have really detrimental impacts on this child. And we won't know until that child is actually born. And so that is also the danger, is like, in the name of being pro-life, 2 lives are being tampered with in a way that can lead to irreparable damage and emotional harm. And they're also not paying that price.
I would actually say it's beyond 2 lives. It could impact millions of women around the country, right? Where women are reduced to the idea that only purpose that they serve, both when they're alive and dead, is to give birth, is to be a conduit for experimentation without their consent. And, I don't want to take the responsibility off of the hospital, because you've had the state attorney general basically saying that the heartbeat bill does not restrict a hospital from taking someone off of life support when they are brain dead. And so there is this gray area that the hospital is trying to protect themselves. But in the process, they are now putting millions of women in its harm's way by creating this precedent that is not reflective, or what is said to be not reflective by the attorney general, of the actual heartbeat bill. But the heartbeat bill itself is not clear. And that is what's creating so many confusion, that is putting the lives of women all across Georgia at risk.
Yeah. Scary hour. But yeah, I think it's time to really dream about what reproductive justice could look like, not just in the limitations of what we have seen and know so far, but just like true wildest dreams, like in your best case scenario. And I think I always, even though, we can have conversations about why this country is the richest country in the world, and whose backs that comes on, but the fact of the matter is, America is the richest country in the world. America is the most powerful country in the world from a military standpoint. What is all of that power and wealth for if actual citizens don't get to benefit from it? And so I think it's worth asking, like, what should the future of reproductive justice and care and look like in a country that posits itself as being the most powerful and the most advanced and the most wealthy? And I just love thinking about that prompted framing, because we are so used to accepting the bare minimum and like the cookie crumbs that fall off of the table when we should be demanding so much more. So for me, I imagine birth being one of the most state and community supported processes ever. That those who do choose to carry can begin families with ease and love at the center, with paid parental leave beginning at the positive pregnancy test. Because let's be real, working through morning sickness that actually lasts all day, working through all of the potential complications that come up during a pregnancy is a lot. And a baby feels all of the stress that mother feels. And so seeing women working up until the 9th month is ridiculous to me in the richest country in the world. I would want paid parental leave beginning as soon as possible. Calm and well-staffed hospitals and birthing centers, doulas and midwifery care for everyone, like regular doctor's visits. And this is not something that doesn't exist in other places. There are so many articles and pieces of content about how luxury birth centers exist as a norm in other places. And I am especially inspired by South Korea's postpartum facilities. So I want to share a clip of that real quick and then get your thoughts, Jamira.
Yep.
After you give birth at a hospital, you can sign up for and go to, and they have 24-hour nurses to take care of your babies 24 hours a day. And basically it's just set up and meant for you to be able to recover your body and regain your strength before you go home and have to really start taking care of your baby. And the purpose of it is to also to help ease you into parenthood, because in Korea, there's not a babysitting culture. Like in Western countries, we babysit babies from the time we're like, 14, 15, 16 sometimes. So we do have a little bit more experience in that, but in Korea, like people have never even seen a newborn baby or changed a diaper or anything. So they need a lot of teaching. So these places also would teach you how to care for your baby, teach you and help you with breastfeeding, breast massage, and all sorts of things like that. But let's get into it. What is the Sanujoriwan and what do Korean postpartum care facilities offer? So the first thing I mentioned is there are 24-hour nurses to care for your baby. So basically, if you're like me and you had surgery and you really need some time to recover, they can take care of your baby. Basically, you can see your baby or take care of your baby as much as you want. If you want to do all the breastfeedings and let them know, and every time the baby wakes up, they'll call you so you can breastfeed and they'll help you with that. They're always touching your breast here though. I swear every time they see me, they're like, okay, you don't need a breast massage. Like they don't even ask, the nurses just come up, whoop, grab your boobs. So they're gonna be grabbing your titties, just to let you know. But it's nice because they'll be like, oh, you have maybe a blockage here, and they'll schedule you a breast massage to go get the breast massage. And in each of the rooms, they give you a nice, very expensive $2 to $3 grand breast pump that you can use to continually pump. So even if you are not breastfeeding your baby, or anytime you need to pump day or night, you can pump and then give it to the nurses, and they'll give it to your babies for you in a bottle. Or in our case, our babies were at the hospital for a little bit because they were born a little bit premature. So as I was pumping, they would freeze it and store it for us, and then my husband would come and get it at night to take it to the hospital. So it's very convenient in that way. But if you don't want to breastfeed or breast pump, then they do formula feed the babies, and they support that as well. They weigh your babies every day and bathe them for you, and they come and give you a report on how well they've eaten and if they're going to the bathroom well. And also a couple times a week, a doctor from a nearby pediatrician's office comes in to check up on the babies and gives you any detailed reports if there's anything that you need to be worried about or anything you might want to go to the doctor's office about after you leave here.
Wow. I mean, I was just in South Korea. I did not know that. But I'm not surprised and that makes so much sense. We put so much emphasis on the assumption that people know how to take care of a baby, like know how to care for a baby, or even know how to care for their own bodies after they've done probably one of the most traumatic things you can do to your body, right, is to give birth. And just hearing like the holistic caring and the holistic understanding and like both for the mother and the baby is inspiring, and is something that we should definitely think about. How do we duplicate here in a way that is approachable, affordable, and accessible for all women? But yeah, wow, I did not know about that at all.
Yeah, South Korea is up a million. Okay. And it's not just South Korea. A lot of places are doing so much better. I know you were putting me on to something that Finland's got going on.
Yeah, I mean, there's several countries offering what is called like baby boxes for new families as a part of their maternity support program. Finland is one of them. They're one of the original famously began in the 1930s. And it's now a tradition where all expectant mothers receive a box filled with baby essentials and a small mattress. Other countries who also have adopted similar programs include Scotland, parts of Canada, and New South Wales. And some of the things that are included in this baby box is pretty substantial. I mean, you have everything from diapers to a week's supply of clothes, formula, bottles. It's very comprehensive, and it shows that there's an intentionality by the state to make birthing as easy and convenient and supportive as possible, which we do not feel here in the United States. It almost feels like a duty that women have to do, even when we're financially, emotionally, and physically unstable.
Yeah. Like, for example, you can't bring your baby home from the hospital in the US until you have passed a car seat test. And so you have to bring in a car seat that fits the baby, that is correctly installed. And it's like, instead of making it like a barrier to exiting the hospital, what if hospitals provided the car seats, showed you how to install it, put it in your vehicle for you. And then you could bring your baby home because they made it happen. And I think this also goes to another part of my like reproductive justice care dream, but it's just CPS. I just feel like the role of CPS is so overinflated in some ways and so under, represented in other ways. And it's like, okay, you have so many children who are dealing with abuse and CPS never tracks it. But what they will track is a family who just doesn't have the money and the resources. And they will take a baby out of your home because you don't have the money and the resources to be able to show up consistently for that child, but then offer a stipend and a check monthly to another family to take care of your child. What if there was some agency that just made a guaranteed income for families that said, hey, you can't be working 3 jobs and be a good and present parent. We are going to make sure that you only have to work 1 job, or that someone's able to stay home and care for this child the way that they need. And here's the tools to do that. Here's the money you need. Here's the equipment you need. Here's, whatever the case that is. Okay, your baby is malnourished. I'm not going to take it. Let me make sure y'all have enough food. Clearly something's going on in this house where this might not be the only child in the home who is dealing with malnourishment. And so I just think that the rush is towards, okay, while you're pregnant, you have to keep that baby. And then once your baby gets here, you better do right by that baby or we'll take it. It's like,
even not even right by the baby. You have to do what we deem as the standard of care, even if no one has ever taught you, right? We see this across a number of issues within our society. It's like, how do you as a young person know you're breaking the law if no one ever taught you the law? How do you as a young person know that like how to eat well and like how to take care of yourself if no one has ever taught you? There's an expectation of knowledge in this country that is not replicated by the simple fact that we're not teaching it. And we don't teach people how to raise children or how to properly care for them. And I think one of the things that really grinds my teeth with CPS is the fact that they rush to punish versus rush to understand. There are definitely people who immediately need to be removed from the house, immediately need to be separated from their parents. But there are some people who, like, their kid might be not malnourished because the family has been feeding the kid and the kid just has been throwing up and they don't know what to do, right? They don't know how to ask questions. They don't have the healthcare to be able to go and seek the medical support that they need. Or if they did seek the medical support, the rush to judgment by many of those hospitals is that, oh, that person is abusing their child, versus maybe ask questions, maybe inquire more and get more information. And it's so much judgment and so lack of care that we have as a society. We rush to judgment, we rush to punishment, and in the process, the ones who get impacted the most are the children that we claim to give a damn about, which isn't reflective in the policies and practice of this country. If anything, they're like, birth the kid, and if you're too poor to care for it, we don't care. Like, you literally have politicians who will say, we are pro-life, yet do not believe in universal school lunches.
Right. Want you to go into debt eating during the school day. Like,
but we're not going to feed you. We actually, or like, have kids, but we're not going to ensure that there's actually an earth for them to live in, like a habitable earth, because we are just destroying the environment. Like, there's no holistic consideration. It's just like birth, which tells me that it feels like a government way to ensure that they have a large supply of poor workers who will take any and every job and will do any and everything just to survive, because they don't have the flexibility, the means to have any sort of like real agency for themselves.
Yeah, so true. And it's like, okay, stand on business. If you're saying that you're pro-life, if you're saying that you want abortion rates to go down, one of the best ways to ensure that abortion rates can go down is to make sure that those who get pregnant are equipped to deal with those pregnancies. I think right now there are a lot of people, even who are married, who have decent jobs, who get pregnant and their stomach drops, thinking of what the impact that's going to be on their life. If you want people to be excited about pregnancy, eliminate the stomach drop. Make it so that people are like, oh, great. Like, this beautiful chunky baby is going to come into my life. And all I have to do is like
love it and care
back and love it and care for it, and allow my community and the state that I pay taxes to like help me make that happen. And so I just think that for those who do want to claim consistency, especially progressives and Democrats, I think that we really need to be championing these holistic policies. So anyway, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back, share some deeper dives and ways that you can dig more into that work when we come back on The Other Side of Change, only on Black Star Network.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
As always, the conversation is far from over, but we hope that we help to clarify what the stakes are and what is the fight ahead and all of our role within it.
Yeah. And you know, Jamira and I are going to make sure that y'all know how to dive deeper because this is just the beginning of that conversation. So check out Liberating Abortion by Regina Mahone and Renee Bracey Sherman, an incredible book that kind of illuminates what a more imaginative version of reproductive justice care can be. There's another book called Killing the Black Body, Race, Reproduction, and the Meaning of Liberty by Dorothy Roberts. It's a really great deep dive into what we don't want and what the history of this has looked like, especially for those who look like us. And continue to support and follow the lead of organizations like Sister Song, local abortion funds near you, support legislation like the Momnibus Reproductive Justice Act, which was introduced, I believe, in 2019 or 2021, and just understand that there is a better way. There is something more out there, and we just have to demand those who are representing us as elected officials to really chart that path.
Absolutely. And as always, stay engaged, stay informed, and know your rights, and also organize and hold your representatives accountable. Until next time, keep pushing into the future.